Hey guys, so I am back and we are going to be continuing on with our novel. We've been reading Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing. Our main character in the story is Peter Hatcher and he has a problem. So we've been talking since school started about problems and solutions. And Peter's problem, through each chapter, we get to see some other way that his problem has caused issues or chaos or turmoil or aggravation or annoyance or any of those other synonyms that we could think of to describe Peter Hatcher's problem. What is his biggest problem? Who can tell me? So I think I hear you guys saying fudge. And you're correct. Because Peter's brother, Fudge, also known as Farley Drexel Hatcher, is his biggest problem. Fudge does all kinds of things that causes problems. In chapter 1, we find out that he has temper tantrums and that he always gets into Peter's things. In chapter 2, we find out that he was a terror when Mr. and Mrs. Yarby came to visit. In chapter 3, he stops eating, refuses to eat. And chapter 4, he pretends he's a bird and falls off the jungle gym and knocks out his front 2 teeth. In chapter 5, he has a birthday party, so he's no longer 3, he's now 4. And his friends come over. And if we thought that Fudge was bad, oh my stars, his friends, right? So we have, who were his friends? Let's see, we had Sam. Can you think of a character trait? We've been talking about character traits. So a word that describes not what Sam looks like, but how Sam acts. He's a chicken, right? He's afraid. He's a scaredy cat. He was scared of balloons. He was scared of the birthday party. He was scared of the shadows. And then we also find out he's a little greedy because he doesn't want to give Fudge the birthday present and let him keep it. So we have Sam. We also had a little girl. What was her name? Right, Jenny. So Jenny looked innocent, which was a vocabulary word, but was she innocent? Was she free of guilt, or was she a little naughty herself? Right? She was naughty. Not only did she bite Grandma, what else did she do? It was a huge mess. Caused Mom to dash, another vocabulary word, into the living room. She peed in the floor on purpose. How nasty, right? So we have Jenny, we have Sam, and then we have Ralph. What did Ralph do? I like his name because it kind of makes me think of what he did. So they said Ralph was a little chubby. He liked to eat. So as soon as he came into the apartment, he ran to the kitchen looking for food. And he wanted birthday cake. And then when they finally had birthday cake, he ate all of his cake and he wanted more. And Peter said, Mom, you better not. But it was a birthday party and Mom was trying to be cool. And so she said, okay. And then what did Ralph do? He barfed it up, right? He threw up. And so then that caused more chaos. So if you have Fudge and his 3 friends all in the same apartment, can you imagine the chaos? Well, that was chapter 5. And then chapter 6, they have to go buy new shoes. And so they get to go out in the town. And at the shoe store, Fudge didn't like his shoes and he threw a temper tantrum. Another vocabulary word. So that brings us to chapter 7. So before we start reading, on your Google Slides, if you are an online student, if you are an in-person student that is working online right now, then in your reading notebook, on the page where we have the predictions, which is slide 2 for online learners, and the page where we have our questions, which is slide 3 on the Google Slides, I want you to go in and I want you to go ahead and type your question that you have after listening and reading chapter 5 and your question for chapter 6. And I also want you to make a prediction. Now that we've read 5 and 6, what do you think is going to happen next? So on your next slot, beside of chapter 5, tell me what you think is going to happen next. Beside of chapter 6, tell me what you think is going to happen next. And then for chapter 5 question, tell me a question you have. Maybe, why didn't mom ask their parents to stay? Be a good question, right? I think if I was Peter, next time I'd say, Mom, why don't you ask them parents to stay with us, right? So maybe that's your question. So whatever your question is after chapter 5 and after chapter 6, I want you to go ahead and read that or type that. So if you haven't done that, pause this video. Yep, pause. Online learners, you're going to go to your Google Slides, fill out your question and your predictions for 5 and for 6. In-person students that are working online, you're opening your reading notebook to predictions and questions and putting your questions and your predictions for 5 and 6. So go do that. Pause. And now that you've done that, we'll keep reading chapter 7. So here we go with chapter 7. I like chapter 7. It's a little fun, and maybe some of you guys can relate to Peter's problem he has. So this is called the Flying Train Committee. In January, our class started a project on the city he lives in, which is what? New York City. Right. So they started a project on New York City. Ms. Haver, our teacher, divided us up into committees by where we live. We have a new character that we haven't written down. Get your notebook. I'll wait. So in your notebook, on our characters and setting, under characters, we need to add Mrs. Haven. So our teacher, Ms. Haven, divided us up into committees by where we live. That way we could work at home. My committee was me, Jimmy Fargo. Who else lives where he lives in that apartment building? They don't get along. She's bossy. Another character trait, by the way. Sheila. Our topic was transportation. Does anybody know what transportation is? So if I told you school buses and taxis and the Bluefield area transit buses and the Tazewell buses that run, the 4-county transit system, or subways. Oh, we've talked about the subway because Dad and Jimmy have been mugged on the subway. All of those are examples of transportation. So transportation is a way to get from A to B, a way to get from one place to another. We decided to make my apartment the meeting place because I'm the only one of the 3 of us who's got his own bedroom. In a few weeks, each committee has to hand in a booklet, a poster, and be ready to give an oral report, which means they have to stand up in front of the class and give a presentation, which is one of the things that we'll be doing this year in 4-H. So, making a poster, giving a presentation. Peter does something like you guys do in 4-H, and we'll talk about that more, so don't worry about that yet. So it says in a few weeks, each committee has to hand in their project. So their committee is made up of him, Jimmy Fargo, and Sheila. So what would a committee be? My committee was me, Jimmy Fargo, and Sheila. Our topic was transportation. So they're working on the same project. They're working on it in a group. So could we say that a committee is a group? Yeah, I like that. So a committee is a group that work together on the same type of project. The first day we got together after school, we bought a yellow poster board. Jimmy wanted a blue one, but Sheila talked him out of it. Yellow is a much brighter color, she explained. Everything will show up on it. Blue is too dull. Sheila thinks she's smarter than me and Jimmy put together, just because she's a girl. So right away, she told us she would be in charge of our booklet, and me and Jimmy could do most of the poster. So there's a trait we could use to describe Sheila. She thinks she's smarter than the boys. She thinks she's what could we say? I think I heard it. She's a know-it-all, right? She thinks she's just so smart. As long as we check with her first to make sure she likes our ideas, she's fine with us doing the poster. We agreed since Sheila promised to do 10 pages of written work, and we would only have to do 5. After we bought the yellow poster board, we went to the library. We took out 7 books on transportation. We wanted to learn all we could about, this is what they're researching, speed, traffic congestion. Has anybody ever said that their sinuses are congested or their nose is congested? If your nose is congested, it's all stopped up. So if they're talking about traffic, vehicles, congestion, what would traffic congestion be? All stopped up. Have you ever watched a movie where they're in a city and the cars are backed up, one car after another, and they're barely moving? That would be traffic congestion. Just like when your nose gets stopped up and it's not moving and air can't get in and it sounds like you're talking like this. That's your congestion in your nose. Well, that's kind of like what it is when traffic is backed up, but instead of your nose sounding funny, then you hear all the cars getting impatient going beep, 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 beep. Traffic congestion. So their project, they're researching speed, traffic congestion, and pollution. There's a vocabulary word. We should know that one from the previous chapters. Tell me what pollution means. I'm waiting. Pollution. Yeah, especially if we're talking about traffic, pollution would be all of that exhaust and that stinky air that cars and buses and trucks and taxis and boats and airplanes and all that traffic emits into our ozone, into our air for us to breathe. We arranged to meet on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons for the next 2 weeks. Our first committee meetings turned out like this. This is cool. Listen and see if we can put into order what they do. All right? Turned out like this. We got to my place by 3:30. Had a snack, then played with Dribble for another half hour. Sheila gave up on cooties when Fudge lost his front teeth. I suppose you could say she learned her lesson. But it still isn't much fun to have her hanging around. She's always complaining that she got stuck with the worst possible committee, and that me and Jimmy fool more than we like to work. We only put up with her because we have no choice. Sheila and Jimmy have to be home for supper before 5:30. So at 5 o'clock we start cleaning up. So we had some times. 3:30, they get home to Peter's apartment. They have a snack. They play with Dribble for half an hour. How many minutes is half an hour? Right, 30 minutes. So they play with Dribble for 30 minutes. And then they work. And then they have to start cleaning up at 5 o'clock. So 3:30 to 4:30 to 5:30, which is when they have to be home for dinner. 3:30 to 4:30 to 5:30. How many hours do they have? 2. So they have 2 hours. And in that 2 hours, they have a snack, they play with Dribble, they work on their project, and then they clean up. You see how he said first, next, then? All of those words are what we call sequence or transition words. Those are some of the words you're going to be talking about with Mrs. Jones, the other Mrs. Jones, in writing the next couple of weeks. So keep that in mind. Transition, you put into order. We keep our equipment under my bed in a shoebox. We have a set of magic markers, Elmer's glue, Scotch tape, and a really sharp pair of scissors, and a container of silver sparkle. That'd be my favorite part. Sheila carries our committee booklet back and forth with her. She doesn't trust us enough to leave it at my house. The poster board fits under my bed, along with our supplies. We stack the library books on my desk. The reason I make sure we clean up good is that my mother told me if I left a mess, we'd have to find someplace else to work. By our third meeting, I told Jimmy and Sheila that I'd figured out the solution to New York City's traffic problems. Ooh, problem, solution. So they think that New York City has a traffic problem. It's always congested and busy and backed up. If you've ever watched a movie where the setting is New York, I'm sure you've seen those taxis backed up bumper to bumper to bumper with nobody moving. Well, Peter thinks he's figured out the solution. Let's see what he says. Well, there's too much traffic. So the solution is we have to get rid of the traffic, I said. There shouldn't be any cars or buses or taxis allowed in the city. What we really need is a citywide monorail system. Let's talk about that word monorail. Monorail. It's a vocabulary word. There's a word in there that means one. So we've talked a little bit about prefixes this year. We've said that bi means 2. Tri means 3. Quad means 4. Mono. How much does mono mean? We've done bi, tri, and quad. Mono, 1. So it's a one rail, a mono rail. So I used a prefix and my root rail, one rail, to figure out that meaning. I used my prefixes, monorail, one rail. We'll come back to that word when we define it. But a monorail is something, a system, made up of one main rail system. That's too expensive, Sheila said. It sounds good, but it's not practical. So practical is also a vocabulary word. If she says it's too expensive, it sounds good, but it's not practical, then what does she mean by practical? It's too expensive, sounds good, but could it really work? She's saying it's probably not something that could reasonably work. So it sounds good, but it doesn't really, it wouldn't work. I disagree, I told Sheila. It's very practical. Besides getting rid of traffic, it will get rid of air pollution and it'll get people where they're going a lot faster. But it's not practical, Peter, Sheila said again. It costs too much. So that's why she says it's not practical. I opened one of my books on transportation and read Sheila a quote. "A monorail system is the hope of the future." I cleared my throat and looked up. But we can't write a report just about the monorail, Sheila said. We'll never be able to fill 20 written pages with that. We can write big, Jimmy suggested. No, Sheila said. I want a good mark on this project, Peter. You can write your 5 pages about the monorail system and how it works. Jimmy, you can write your 5 pages about pollution caused by transportation. And I'll write my 10 pages on the history of transportation in the city. Sheila folded her arms and smiled. So this coming week, in the next couple weeks with Miss Tricia Jones in language, you guys are going to be talking about how to create a writing that has more than one paragraph. So you're keeping the same topic, like theirs is transportation, but you're adding more than one subtopic. So their main topic is all about transportation, but they've divided it up into 3 subtopics. They have pollution caused by transportation. They have the solution to transportation, and they have the history of transportation. So 3 smaller headings or topics that all relate to one thing, transportation. And you're going to be talking about that more with the other Mrs. Jones. Can I write big? Jimmy asked. I don't care how big you write, as long as you put your name on your 5 pages, Sheila told him. That's not fair, Jimmy said. This is supposed to be a group project. Why should I have to put my name on my 5 pages? Then don't write big, Sheila shouted. Okay. I'll write so small Ms. Haver will need a microscope to see the letters. Very funny, Sheila said. Look, I told them both. I think all of our written work should be in the same handwriting. That's the only fair way. Otherwise, Mrs. Haver will know who did what, and it won't be a group project. Say, that's a good idea, Jimmy said. Which one of us has the best handwriting? Me and Jimmy looked at Sheila. You think they're trying to get out of some work? Sneaky voice. Well, I do have a nice, even script. So if she says script, she's talking about her handwriting, her cursive. But if I'm going to copy over your written work, you'd better give it to me by next Tuesday. Otherwise, I won't have enough time to do the job. And you two better get going on your poster. Sheila talked like she was the teacher and we were the kids. Me and Jimmy designed the whole poster ourselves. We used the pros and cons of each kind of transportation. It really was clever. We divided a chart into land, sea, and air, and we planned an illustration for each, with an airplane done in silver sparkle and the letters done in red and blue magic marker. We got halfway through the lettering that day. We also sketched a ship, the plane, and the truck. When Sheila saw it, she asked, Is that supposed to be a train? No, I told her. It's a truck. It doesn't look like one, she said. It will, Jimmy told her, when it's finished. I hope so, Sheila said, because right now it looks like a flying train. That's because the ground's not under it yet, Jimmy said. Yeah, I agreed. See, we've got to make it look like it's on a street. Right now, it does kind of look like it's up in space. So does the ship, Sheila said. We'll put some water lines around it, I told her. And some clouds around the plane, Sheila said. Listen, Jimmy hollered. Did anybody ever tell you you're too bossy? This poster is ours. You do the booklet. Remember, that's the way you wanted it. So there's another character trait. We might have mentioned it. Sheila's a little bossy. She's a natural leader. Working together. Oops. See, there you go again, Sheila said. You keep forgetting this is a committee. We're supposed to work together. Working together doesn't mean you give the orders and we carry them out, Jimmy said. My feelings exactly, I thought. Sheila didn't answer Jimmy. She picked up her things, got her coat, and left. I hope she never comes back, Jimmy said. She'll be back, I told him. We're her committee. Jimmy laughed. Yeah, we're all one happy committee. I put our poster under the bed, said goodbye to Jimmy, then washed up for supper. My mother was pretty nice about our committee meetings. She arranged to have Fudge play at Ralph's apartment on Tuesdays and Jenny's on Thursdays. Sam has the chicken pox, so he can't play at all. So that would be a physical trait. So has anybody ever had chicken pox or seen someone with chicken pox? Gives you those red spots all over your body. So right now, Sam is covered in those red spots that get very itchy. I was glad that next week would be our last committee meeting after school. I was sick of Sheila, and I was getting sick of transportation. Besides, now that I knew a monorail system was the only way to save our city, I was getting upset that the mayor and all the other guys that run things at City Hall weren't doing anything about installing one. If I know that's the best method of city transportation, how come they don't know it? The next day when I came home from school, I went into my bedroom to see Dribble like I always do. Fudge was in there, sitting on my bed. "Why are you in my room?" I asked him. He smiled. "You know you're not supposed to be in here. This is my room." "Want to see?" Fudge said. Uh-oh. "See what?" "Want to see?" "What? What are you talking about?" I asked. He jumped off my bed and crawled underneath it. Uh-oh, what's under the bed? He came out with our poster. He held it up. "See?" he said. "Pretty." "What did you do?" I yelled. "What did you do to our poster?" It was covered all over with scribbles in every color of magic marker. It was ruined. It was a mess, and it was ruined. I was ready to kill Fudge. I grabbed my poster and ran into the kitchen to show it to my mother. I could hardly speak. "Look," I said, feeling a lump in my throat. Has anybody ever been so mad or frustrated that they felt a lump right here? If you feel a lump right here, what are you trying so hard not to do? Just look at what he did to my poster. I felt tears come to my eyes, but I didn't care. So that lump were his tears coming to the surface. "How could you let him?" I asked my mother. "How? Don't you care about me?" I threw the poster down and ran into my room. I slammed the door, took off my shoe, and flung it at the wall. What did he do if he flung it at the wall? He threw it, right? He chucked his shoe across the room at the door. It made a black mark where it hit. Well, so what? Soon I heard my mother hollering, and then Fudge crying. After a while, my mother knocked on my bedroom door and called, "Peter, may I come in?" I didn't answer. She opened the door and walked over to my bed. She sat down next to me. "I'm very sorry," she said. I still didn't say anything. "Peter," she began. I didn't look at her. She touched my arm. "Peter, please listen. Don't you see, Mom? I can't ever do my homework without him messing it up. It's just not fair. I wish he was never born. Never. I hate him." Now, do you think he really hates his brother? Hopefully not. Probably not. But is he really mad right now? "You don't hate him," my mother said. You don't hate him. You just think you do." "Don't tell me," I said. I really can't stand that kid." "You're angry," my mother told me. "I know that, and I don't blame you. Fudge had no right to touch your poster. I spanked him." "Mom spanked Fudge? Fudge never gets in trouble." This is a game changer, y'all. Game changer. "You did?" I asked. "Fudge never gets spanked. My parents don't believe in spanking." "You really spanked him?" I asked again. Do you think there's ever a good reason to spank somebody? Do you think Fudge deserved to be spanked for ruining Peter's committee's project? "Yes," my mother said. "Hard?" I asked. "On his backside," she told me. I thought that over. "Peter," my mother put her arm around me, "I'll buy you a new poster board tomorrow. It really was my fault. I should never have let him into your room." "That's why I need a lock on my door," I said. "I don't like locks on doors. We're a family. We don't have to lock each other out." Although, maybe it wouldn't be a bad idea to lock Fudge out, right? If I had a lock, Fudge wouldn't have gotten my poster. "It won't happen again," my mother promised. I wanted to believe her, but really I didn't. Unless she tied him up, I knew my brother would get into my room again. The next day, while I was at school, my mother bought a new yellow poster board. The hard part was explaining to Jimmy that we had to start all over again. He was a good sport about it. He said this time he'd make sure the truck didn't look like it was a flying train. And I said this time I'd make a pencil mark first so my letters didn't go uphill. Our committee met that afternoon. Sheila didn't mention the last time. Neither did we. Me and Jimmy worked on the poster while Sheila copied our written work into the booklet. We'd be ready to give our oral report to the class on Monday, not like some committees who hadn't even started yet. By 5 o'clock, we had finished our poster, and Sheila was almost done with the cover for our booklet. Jimmy walked over and stood behind her, watching her work. After a minute, he yelled, "What do you think you're doing, Sheila?" I got up from the floor and joined them at my desk. I took a look at the cover. It was pretty nice. It said, "Transportation in the City." Under that, it said, by Sheila Tubman, Peter Hatcher, and James Fargo. And under that, in smaller letters, it said, "Handwritten by Miss Sheila Tubman." So do you think it was fair that she did that? Now I knew why Jimmy was mad. "Oh, no," I said, holding my hand to my head. "How could you?" Sheila didn't say anything. "It's not fair," I told her. "We didn't put our names on our poster." "But the cover's all done," Sheila said. "Can't you see that? I'll never get the letters so straight again. It looks perfect." "Oh, no," Jimmy shouted. "We're not handing the booklet in like that. I'll rip it up before I let you." He grabbed the booklet and threatened to tear it in half. Sheila screamed, "You wouldn't! I'll kill you! Give it back to me, Jimmy Fargo!" She was ready to cry. I knew Jimmy wouldn't tear it up, but I didn't say so. "Peter, make him give it back." "Will you take off that line about your handwriting?" I asked. "I can't. It'll ruin the booklet." "Then I think you should rip it up," I said. Sheila stamped her foot. "Oh, I hate you both." "You don't really," I told her. "You just think you do." Didn't Mom say that same thing to Peter the last night when Fudge got into his poster? Do you think Peter may have learned a little bit of a lesson there? I guess he really does love Fudge, doesn't he? "I know I do," saying she hates them both. "That's because you're angry right now," I said. I couldn't help but smile to myself. So he used Mom's words to help the situation. Sheila jumped up and tried to get the booklet, but Jimmy held it over his head, and he's much taller than Sheila, so she had no chance at all. Finally, she sat down and whispered, "I give up. You win. I'll take my name off." "You promise?" Jimmy asked. "I promise," Sheila said. Jimmy set the booklet down on my desk in front of Sheila. "Okay," he said. "Start." "I'm not going to make a whole new cover," Sheila said. "What I'll do is turn this bottom line into a decoration." She picked up a magic marker and made little flowers out of the words. Soon, handwritten by Miss Sheila Tubman, turned into 16 small flowers. "There," Sheila said. "It's done." "It looks pretty good," I told her. "Would have looked better without those flowers," Jimmy said. "But at least it's fair now." That night, I showed my mother and father our new poster. They thought it was great, especially our silver sparkle airplane. My mother put the poster on top of the refrigerator so it would be safe until the next day when I would take it to school. Now I had nothing to worry about. Sheila had the booklet, the poster was safe, and our committee was finished before schedule. I went into my room to relax. Fudge was sitting on the floor near my bed. Y'all, Fudge is in his room again. I mean, seriously? My shoebox of supplies was in front of him. His face was a mess of magic marker colors, and he was using my extra sharp scissors. What's he doing with the scissors? He was using my extra sharp scissors to snip. What's snip mean? Synonym for snip. Cut away at his hair. And the hair he snipped was dropping into Dribble's bowl, which he had in front of him on the floor. "See," he said. "See Fudge? Fudgy's a barber." That night I found out hair doesn't hurt my turtle. I picked off every strand from his shell. I cleaned out his bowl and washed off his rocks. He seemed happy. 2 things happened the next day. One was my mother had to take Fudge to the real barber to do something about his hair. He had plenty left in the back, but just about nothing up front or on top. The barber said there wasn't much he could do until the hair grew back. Between his fangs and his hair, he was getting funnier looking every day. The second was my father came home with a chain latch for my bedroom door. I could reach it when I stood on tiptoe, but that brother of mine couldn't reach it at all. No matter what. Our committee was the first to give its report. Mrs. Haver said we did a super job. She liked our poster a lot. She thought the Silver Sparkle airplane was the best. The only thing she asked us was, how come we included a picture of a flying train? So even Mrs. Haver thought their truck was a flying train. Whoops. So, did Peter accomplish something in this chapter? He was able to work with the committee, even though they had their moments where they disagreed and didn't quite get along. Were they able to turn in a completed project and get a good grade on it? Yeah. And not only that, but because of what Fudge did, that messed with Peter and Sheila and Jimmy's project, Peter was able to get something accomplished that was huge. What did he accomplish? This could be the beginning of solutions for Peter through this whole book. Mom and Dad finally conceded or gave in and got him a lock to keep Fudge out of his room. Yay! All right, guys, so now that we've read chapter 7, you should have a question. What's your question? Did anybody else do transportation? Does New York use monorail today? I don't know. What's your question? So go to your slide. If you're online, that's slide 3 for questions. Type me a question on chapter 7, something you want to know. And now that we've read chapter 7, what do you think is going to happen next? Peter's able to have a lock on his door now. That's quite an accomplishment. So is Peter going to no longer have problems with Fudge? Or is Fudge going to figure out a way to get past that lock? Make your prediction. So if you're an online student, on slide 2, beside of chapter 7, you can write your prediction. If you are an in-person student that's working online, then in your notebook, on your prediction page, you're writing your prediction and your question. We will talk more about chapter 7 in our Google Meet and on my recorded video. I hope you guys enjoyed. We'll be back in a little while to go on and read chapter 8, which is called The TV Star. See you later, guys.